Welcome back. Thanks for joining us on this investigation. Make sure to subscribe right now because a massive break in the Lynette Hooker case is about to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about this mystery.
Forget Brian Hooker's original story
About his wife falling from a drifting, helpless little dinghy.
A major breakthrough from federal investigators has just completely shattered his entire alibi.
The Coast Guard tracked down Brian's sailboat at sea
And pulled the digital data from his green smartwatch.
The terrifying truth is the GPS proves his boat was never drifting helplessly in the storm.
Someone was actively steering it,
tightly circling two highly specific, deep areas of the ocean. Detectives now believe he was dumping something heavy down to the ocean floor.
Federal agents just collected DNA from Lynette's family to identify her body as soon as divers recover it.
Do not miss a single second of this video, because if you skip this evidence, you will miss the precise moment the trap closes on Brian Hooker.
Let's look directly at the evidence.
Right where that digital tracking data stops, the real nightmare begins. When the Coast Guard Investigative Service pulled the files from Brian Hooker's green smartwatch, they weren't just looking at random GPS numbers. They were staring at a literal digital roadmap of a suspected crime scene. Brian swore up and down to the Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue Crews
That his dinghy was entirely dead in the water after the starter key went overboard with Lynette.
He claimed he was merely a passenger to the wind,
drifting helplessly across the dark sea of Abaco
for more than 8 agonizing hours before washing ashore at Marsh Harbor. But federal investigators uncovered evidence that completely shatters his tragic husband persona.
The tracking data proves the dinghy was moving with clear purpose under steady engine power. It did not just drift.
It headed straight to two highly specific, isolated points in the open sea, where the depth drops off.
Once the vessel hit those exact spots, it did not just drift past.
The digital tracker reveals the boat tightly circling in place,
looping around repeatedly as if an anchor had been dropped on purpose to hold it steady in the storm.
This twist points the entire investigation in a dark, terrifying new direction. Why would a husband who claimed his motor was dead, and who was supposedly searching for his missing wife, stop to circle in the deepest ocean?
Investigators instantly realized the chilling truth.
Brian was not drifting. He was following a calculated plan. He spent critical time at those coordinates late at night, sitting directly over those deep water zones.
But this is where the mystery takes a massive turn
and leaves detectives with a chilling question.
If Brian was actually steering his boat through the dark, how did he end up washing ashore at Marsh Harbor not just once, but twice that same morning?
That double landing at Marsh Harbor is the exact moment. Brian Hooker's alibi falls apart into a web of impossible lies.
He told local police and the desperate rescue teams
that he drifted through the dark mangroves, washing ashore at a single spot where he managed to crawl out. But federal agents,
detectives mapping his digital footprint, stumbled onto a bizarre anomaly.
The inflatable dinghy actually touched land at 2 different spots, hours apart, on that Easter Sunday morning. If you are truly a stranded sailor with no engine power, drifting blindly at the mercy of the crashing waves and shifts in the tide,
hitting land in 2 different spots is physically impossible.
This tells us Brian was actively steering that boat,
guiding it to a hidden first location before moving to a second,
more convenient spot to stage his elaborate rescue. Local rescue teams familiar with the dangerous Marsh Harbor terrain say there is absolutely no way a person could fight through that dense,
muddy swamp from his alleged landing site to the neighborhood doorsteps he finally knocked on.
So, how did he cross that impassable marsh? Investigators have a chilling theory that changes everything. They believe Brian created a decoy trail using a green flotation device. He tossed the green float into the current to track precisely where the tide would carry it,
tracking the route on his Garmin Marine watch.
Then, using a silent concealed electric motor on his dinghy, he traced that exact line. He made landfall at the first site,
Slipped into the residential neighborhood and searched for outdoor trash bins to get rid of.
Lynette's dry bag, which held her passports and the boat's spare keys. But the most disturbing piece of physical evidence isn't what Brian discarded in those bins.
It is what federal agents realized was completely missing from his luxury yacht when they raided it.
When federal agents officially locked down Brian Hooker's luxury vessel, the Soulmate, they transformed the entire boat into a heavily secured crime scene.
Yellow crime scene tape went up around the deck, and forensic teams began hauling away box after box of bagged evidence.
Yet, what they failed to find on board is what sent shockwaves through the entire case.
True crime sleuths following this case since the early days know that heavy maritime equipment is mysteriously missing from the ship's inventory. Namely, a heavy spare outboard motor that Brian had swapped out but kept on board, along with all of Lynette's personal scuba gear. As an experienced diver, Lynette always used a highly visible, custom pink buoyancy vest, paired with a matching pink weight belt. These lead weights are designed specifically to keep a human body submerged.
Investigators quickly realized both the heavy backup motor and those pink diving weights
had completely vanished from the vessel. The grim theory forming behind closed doors is that these heavy objects never went missing by accident. Federal agents strongly suspect Brian used the heavy spare motor and the custom diving weights
to intentionally pin Lynette's body to the seabed at the exact coordinates his smartwatch showed him circling.
This completely tears apart his original story, that she merely slipped and fell off the back of the dinghy. You do not accidentally fall overboard while strapped into heavy lead weights and holding a spare boat motor. This chilling inventory gap is exactly why the United States government has officially intervened to take full control of the case. Local island police are now cooperating fully, giving U.S. federal dive teams the green light to plunge straight into the murky sea of Abaco. But as underwater recovery teams gear up to drop down to those exact coordinates, a final piece of breaking news shows the net is closing in on Brian. The trap is springing shut, and the most emotional breakthrough in this case just happened behind closed doors. Federal agents recently met with Lynette's grieving mother, father, and daughter to officially secure their DNA samples. This is no routine legal procedure.
Investigators are gathering this genetic data for one dark specific reason.
They are preparing for a positive identification the very moment. Federal dive teams recover her body from the exact coordinates tracked by her green smartwatch. Brian Hooker thought he was clever enough to outrun the law. He paraded his flashy white watch to the public, totally blind to the fact that his green smartwatch acted as a digital black box, logging his every move. The Coast Guard Investigative Service and phone networks have completely shattered his timeline. Now, with the family's DNA in hand, the last forensic piece is locked in. Tick-tock, Brian. The net is tight, the evidence is ironclad, and the handcuffs are coming next.